Let's see. I have a brief PowerPoint presentation for us to go over today. Um, and then, per my norm, what I expected us to do is not going to be able to be what we will do. So we're just going to roll with it because life is that way, isn't it? Um, so, a couple of announcements before we begin. We are beginning Module 1 this week. Woohoo! Um, So that means that in about 4 weeks, your first paper is going to be due. So just keep that kind of scheduling thing in the back of your mind that in about 3 weeks, you're going to be putting a little bit more work into this class than normal. So just make sure to manage your time well that way. Um, I am also grading emails. I was hoping to get all of them done yesterday. I got through most of them and then decided that I wanted to do nothing for a while on the weekend. So I'll finish those later, guys. Let's be real here. Um, and then your introductory essay papers, I'll be getting those back to you tomorrow or the next day. Some of you may see them later today, just kind of depends on how motivated to stare at my screen for several hours I am today. Um, and just as kind of a general reminder, I don't think I went over this a lot in our first session. I try to leave you guys really good comments on your assignments just to kind of offset the lack of instruction you get from me if we had been face to face. So please, when you get grades back on your assignments, review them, see what I said, ask me any questions if something I said doesn't make sense, because, like I said, I try to put in a lot of thought into grading your assignments and respond to things that you say. So that is a good learning opportunity for you guys. Um, and yeah, so that is kind of it for general announcements. We will move right into talking about our first paper. So, with this first paper, we are interested in how rhetoric works. So, in order for us to write rhetorical analyses and use the rhetorical appeals well in our own papers, we first need to understand what they are and how they work. So that's what this chapter is devoted to. We're not necessarily employing the rhetorical appeals for our own purposes yet. We are thinking about how arguments use them either effectively or ineffectively to be persuasive. So before we get into this PowerPoint lesson, I'm really happy to see everyone again. It's nice to have a bit of normalcy. And well, the goals for this synchronous meeting are a little changed. We'll go over that when we get to that part. But I'm hoping for us to just try to be a normal class. Zoom University sucks, man. So these meetings that we do can be as beneficial as you guys want them to be. You can choose to invest in yourselves and in each other by participating, talking to me, asking questions, all that good stuff. Like I've been saying, as if we were in person. I really don't want the Zoom void to consume all of us. And then if there are any like extra things that we can do outside of Zoom to foster a learning community, like a class group me, or even like a class Google Doc in which we can um, in which we can sorry, someone just told me that they're not able to get into class. Okay, well, let's see what I can do for this student. Oh, no, that's not my Zoom link. Well, back when things were easy and all you had to do was like walk in a door to come to class, guys. All right, so hopefully that works. If not, oh, you guys don't need to see all that. Go back to the PowerPoint. Love it. As I was saying, I was thinking even like a Google Doc for us to take notes and have kind of a class-based note thing, I guess, is the best way to describe it. Yeah, so any ideas, let me know. I'm really willing to try anything to make things bearable. Okay, so for the meetings, your cameras can be on or off, no judgment either way, same goes for microphones. But I do expect some sort of participation, either communicating through the chat when I ask you to, engaging in the discussions, all that kind of stuff. Pretty typical things. So today, we are going to review the weekly objectives. We're going to do a brief, oh, I didn't change that from discussion to self-reflection, a 3-2-1 self-reflection over the introduction reading, and discuss the key concepts and terms from the introduction, which there are a lot, as you guys have already seen. The breakout image discussion is causing me a lot of problems right now, so we're not really going to do that. I'll tell you why later. And then we'll kind of take a look at the rhetorical analysis paper as a whole and talk about what I expect from you guys. So to be a little bit more in depth on what we're doing this week is we are thinking more about the rhetorical appeals of ethos, pathos, logos, and kairos. There are a lot of other ways to be rhetorically persuasive and argumentative, but in this class we're focused on the tried and true methods that Plato developed in ancient Greece. Kairos was added in during the Roman Empire. So these are extremely old concepts that, as I said, are tried and true, are persuasive, and generally effective. So we're going to use them and study them. So understanding and being able to define these appeals is very important. That is most of what the reading quiz is this week, is telling me in your own terms what these things are. And then using these appeals to create a rhetorical analysis. So the definition of these things, I think, is very important when you think about our first paper, because as I said, we are doing an analysis of someone else's argument. We aren't creating our own argument. We aren't responding to this person's argument. We're simply looking at how they make their argument and if it is effective or ineffective. So when we go to do that, we are going to break down the text. And the text is going to be one of 4 articles that I've chosen. I've chosen some cool things. I think you guys will like them. But all of these editorials that I found are argumentative, and they have these elements of the rhetorical appeals in them. So that's how we will do our rhetorical evaluation, as I've been saying a lot. Assessing how the author of the argument creates that argument, and if it works or if it doesn't. And it's very fine if it doesn't work in your opinion. So we will move right on. So I changed it here. Woohoo. I would like you guys to take a moment to do a bit of a self-reflection over the introduction reading. So either on paper or on a word processor, I want you to think about 3 things that you've learned from the introduction. They could be the appeals. I know that some of you may not have encountered them before and others may have encountered them in high school. 2 questions that you still have after doing the reading. even if you've encountered these appeals before, it's okay if they're still tricky. And then one aspect of the introduction that you found particularly interesting. So take about 4 minutes to brainstorm your ideas. We'll briefly go over them as a class. So be ready to share, and I will call on you guys. So yeah, we will pause. So how is that for time, guys? Does everybody feel like they've done a bit of self-reflecting? Give me a thumbs up. Excellent. I know that it can be very not fun when your instructor gives you way too much time to do something like this and you sit and wait. So I'm glad to know that it was enough time. Okay, so does anyone want to share? I'm just kidding. All right. Herbie, what is one thing that you learned from the introduction?
Check.
Yeah, we hear you. Your mic's just blasting.
See if I can turn it down a little bit.
Interesting.
All right, so yeah, I mean, going over just rhetorical and everything.
Herbie? Not
Yeah,
hearing ya.
Check.
All right. Zoom University, love it, guys. How about Ashley? Ashley, what's one thing that you learned from the intro? Can you guys hear me? Okay, good. I'm like, I feel like I'm talking to myself a bit. Okay, well, this is a dud. So what I would like you to do instead is to email me your responses so that I can just make sure that everyone is on the same page, because Zoom discussions are awkward as crap. We are going
Some
to
people
move
were putting
on,
stuff into
guys.
the chat.
So like I said, jot down, if you didn't, what you had, send it to me in an email. I'm thinking I'm going to give you guys like attendance extra credit as kind of an incentive to come. I originally didn't plan for that, but I think that it is.
Yeah, I don't think she can hear us.
I think
think
that
so
it
either.
is
Yeah.
fun. Can I not hear you guys?
No, you can't.
Okay. We love it, guys. God damn it. We love it. Yeah, I know. Being a teacher in 2020/2021. Didn't think it was going to be this hard, guys. Okay, so any unanswered questions so far? I feel like all of this is questionable, but I really want to make sure that you guys are understanding these appeals. So I asked, hey, the chat is working. I can read what you guys are saying. I can't freaking hear you guys. So just respond if you think that you're comfortable with the, oh, you're emailing to me that 3-2-1 discussion. Since I can't hear you guys, I want to make sure that like we're all on the same page with the material from what we read. Because if you didn't understand the introduction, you're not going to probably do well on the first paper. So this is our opportunity to make sure that you're understanding what I want you to understand. So that's what you're emailing to me. Just do it later, tomorrow, sometime this week. Yeah, love it. Anyway, so the chat function, something works for me. If you're comfortable with all 4 appeals, tell me that you're good. If any of the appeals are still confusing to you, just list them off, because we're going to go over them in this PowerPoint and I'll know where to spend more time if necessary. Thank you, Herbie. Excellent. For a moment, I was really worried that the chat wasn't working either. I love it. Most everyone is good. That's fantastic. You're making a very stressful Zoom session a little bit easier on me, guys, so thank you. Really appreciate it. So we will continue with talking about argumentation. I feel like with the political year that we just finished, we have this really unfortunately horrible view of argumentation and persuasion. So when we talk about argumentation, we would like people to think about using what you say, things that you create, all of that stuff to persuade people to believe a certain opinion. This can be as simple as an advertisement trying to persuade you in a relatively low stakes situation. This could also be a more political debate, but they unfortunately don't follow some of the things that I will expect you to follow in this class. So this is also, as we have talked about, using the rhetorical appeals, thinking about audience and how they understand what is being said. This is a class on rhetoric. So rhetoric and argumentation go hand in hand because when we use rhetoric, we are being intentional in how we present a certain message. So this is where the rhetorical appeals come into play. They can be used to very effectively get people to believe in what you want them to believe. As you can imagine, this can be used nefariously. Fake news and mis and disinformation can tap into the negative side of rhetoric, but we're going to pretend that the world is a happy place and that all of this works properly and that everyone does this and not this. So one of the most important things, and this is what I said in the first class, is thinking about the intended audience when we start to write our papers. So we have to think about who the author is writing to. And as I've noted, no, this is never anyone who can read, anyone who reads the article, or Americans in general. You'll lose points for that one, guys. When you think about the intended audience, I want you to think about more specifically, who is the author trying to convince? So who is likely to disagree with the author's position? Or even why would the author be writing the article in the first place? All of these things can help you determine more succinctly, more precisely, who the author is talking to. So some examples of specific intended audience: Republicans who are against expanding healthcare, Democrats who are against the widespread use of nuclear power. Yeah, I know. So fun fact, K-State didn't let me upgrade from my student account to a teacher's account. So that's why I'm having many problems. Like, I can't send you guys into breakout rooms, which is what we were going to do. Love it. Absolutely love it. I've been given the tools for success, guys. The last one's my favorite: shared and who are responsible for grading your paper. I am an intended audience and you'll be writing to me a lot. So we're gonna zoom through this, guys. Someone slap me. All right, so ethos, there's more that goes into ethos than the other appeals when you work to identify how it's working. I said work twice. Anyway, that's fine. You get my point. So credibility and trustworthiness is kind of in a nutshell what ethos is. So there are, as I said, I'm just repeating myself now. So guys, Zoom has me frazzled. Ethos based on the author or source. So this is something that we can consider when we start a rhetorical analysis, because you are going to be presented with an article that comes from a specific newspaper that's written by a specific person, and you can use that identification to establish this person's ethos. So certain people have a more authorial ethos on an article than others. A great example is that I have a great ethos to write on English things. I don't have a great ethos to write on math things. I don't know math. If you saw me write a math paper, you would know not to trust what I say because I don't have a strong ethos for that. Something that you guys might encounter for these articles is the author, the editorial board, which is a highly credible source, something with strong ethos, because the entirety of the newspaper is taken responsible for that opinion. So that makes it very strong. And we're 8 minutes left. That was several minutes ago. Okay. Next one is just another example of that. So we're going to skip past that one. And then the next one is evidence. So as I said, I have a strong ethos for Englishy things. So the evidence in my argument that has to do with English things, arguments, is going to be very strong, and you're going to be able to trust that. So if I were to bring in statistics, examples, quotations, all that stuff on my field, you know that there is a strong authorial ethos there. When a scientist talks about the research that they've been doing, what they've discovered in the scientific community, that's another example of strong authorial ethos. And also going along with that, using strong sources, demonstrating that academic community is also very strong. And then also language, which I think is very interesting. So using pronouns such as we, trying to be inclusive can be appealing to the audience. Using language, humor, sarcasm, trying to build that connection with the audience. These are all ways in which authors can employ ethos. And this is also where the intersection between ethos, pathos, and logos can get a little blurry. There's really not a wrong answer here. I think that's important to note. Pathos should be pretty easy. I think it's one that we are innately aware of, is when someone is trying to get us to emotionally respond to something. And that's pretty much it in a nutshell. It's not quite as complex as ethos and logos. So when you're thinking about how an author is using pathos, be mindful of your own feelings. If they've caused a reaction in you, be mindful of that and understand that that is an appeal to pathos that has probably worked. And consider language choices. As I said, this is very interrelated with ethos. So is the author using words that are trying to get you to respond? Swear words, those kinds of things are prime examples of using pathos to try to get you to emotionally respond to the argument. And logos. This one's my favorite, guys. Does the argument logically make sense? Or in like more technical terms, is it valid? So logos tends to be tricky to identify because you're looking at how the argument as a whole is interconnected. That's why I really like my image of the puzzle. That's a really good way to like mentally image how logos works. So your individual pieces of the puzzle is the evidence, the reasons, the things that the author says. When all of those come together, that should create the conclusion, the main point of the argument that the author is trying to get across. We have less than a minute left, guys. So when they all work together, they form a puzzle. And if it doesn't, then the argument is not sound, not valid, and it probably doesn't have a strong logos appeal. I'm posting this PowerPoint to Canvas, guys, just gonna throw that out there. I'm so sorry. I'm gonna call Zoom again. I called them last week because I had problems in my other class. And then Kairos is the timeliness of the argument. This is another one that I think is relatively easy. If you see it on the news, on newspapers, it's probably a kairotic topic. Things that aren't kairotic might be like women's suffrage in the United States. Like, thankfully that happened a while ago. So while it is maybe an important argument to make, it is not one that is current. And that is Kairos. Love it. We were gonna do this. Love it. These are the requirements. I'm glad you guys appreciate me. Thanks so much. The rhetorical evaluation essay, the overview for all of this information is on Canvas. I just thought I'd throw it here to like fill in time. Who would have known that this would have taken that much time? And as I said, this PowerPoint itself is on Canvas. So if anything doesn't make sense, let me know. Here's your homework this week. I thought that this was kind of cool. Please note the invention activity. It's one that tends to take students a bit more time to complete. That's why it's also 20 points. So please don't start it at 10 o'clock on Wednesday. You will not